Wake up, West Coast. It's lunchtime. This is your host, Leland Best, coming to you from along the Shiawassee River here in Corunna, Michigan. I want to welcome you all to the broadcast because we're going to break some rules. It's that time once again where Wake Up West Coast, It's Lunchtime comes out every Monday at noon, where we broadcast out at getvocal.com. If you're not familiar with Get Vocal, stop on by when you get a chance. That's a little high in the face there, isn't it? Let's bring that down a little so you all can see it. If you're watching in from Facebook, YouTube, or anywhere else this might be shared out, please come on over to getvocal.com to take part and join in the conversation, where you can actually sit in the room with me if you'd like and be part of that conversation that goes on Facebook and Twitter all the time, things that are trending, things that aren't so trending. What we've discovered over time is that 140 characters doesn't always get it. And the fact of the matter is you can't always get your point across in text in the first place. A lot of things get misunderstood. A lot of things get off kilter. A lot of things go crazy on social media. I think we all know that. So that's why we like to bring people face to face and make the discussion happen out here at Get Vocal. So that's my little blurb for the moment. We can kind of get things rolling right away here because I've got a lot of stuff to cover, and we're just going to walk right into it. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So we're going to be playing around with a lot of stuff this season. This is season 3, episode 2 of Wake Up West Coast. If you're watching from Facebook, you're probably seeing it either in my Best Conceptions broadcasting page or out on my profile. But if you want to leave comments during the show, please head over to @LelandBestLive, which is my broadcasting page that I normally send most of my content to. So come on over, follow that feed there if you prefer to stay on Facebook, but leave a comment to let us know you're here. I'll bring it up on screen, just like this comment test that I did earlier that you should see in the comment section. So just go ahead and say what you want to say, and we'll try to make you part of that conversation as well. All right, going forward. Let's see who's here first. I got to dip down real quick so I can see if there's anybody in the room. I don't see anybody here at Get Vocal yet, so that's all good. Got to clear my throat. I kind of want to touch base on where we're going to go with Wake Up West Coast in the coming days, weeks, months, however you want to put that. As I mentioned, as you see behind me, we're here every Monday at noon Eastern at Wake Up West Coast. It's lunchtime, where we have a little play on words because everybody over there in California it's like 9 a.m. They're just waking up because there's a 3-hour time difference across the country. So here we're having lunch, and a lot of things have happened in the world already that we like to check in on every now and then and see what's going on with folks. But I'm actually going to get a lot deeper than that this season. This being season 3, I think we've played around a lot with the concept of business and social media and things like that. But we're going to always touch on those subjects because they're very important to me as well. But what I want to do is open up a really big can of worms. And that is, we've got so much stuff we want to do out here. If you saw the title of the broadcast, you may have been a little shocked by that. What I said was basically, let's watch a broke, entrepreneur from Michigan figure out a way to make like $8,000 in the next 10, 11 months. And there's a reason for that. So let's get into that and we'll kind of get things going. So let's see what we got. I am going to be sharing a lot of stuff with you as to what's going on with my life. So I'm going to sit down and talk some serious stuff for a minute. And in case you forgot who I am and you want to reach out to me sometime, you can find me at Leland Best Live. So leave comments there if you'd like to become part of the show. But if you want to learn more about how to do live stream video broadcasting like we're doing here today at Get Vocal, head over to bcblive.com, where I have basically set up a page of information and all kinds of links to all the sources and resources that people need to do online broadcasting. It's kind of what I do. I've been doing it for several years, and my vocation takes me back even decades before that, but that's not what we're here for. So today, I'll just get down to the basics. Today, I had to take a drive up north. There we go. I love it when this happens. It's like the switch won't turn off. It just doesn't want to go away. It keeps coming back on another line. All right, no biggie. I was in probation department today. I know that probably shocks many of you, but I'll explain what happened in short form. And then if you guys have any questions as to why I was there, I'll let you know more about it. I have been fighting a court battle with an ex-wife now for roughly 12 years, since 2006 and 7. I was married to this woman for 4 years, roughly, not quite 4 years. And it was my second marriage. So I was married for a period of 11 years. I had two lovely children. I won't mention names. I'm not going to bring up pictures or anything like that because you never know when people want to get stupid. But the fact of the matter is we had somewhat of a tumultuous relationship, and it just didn't work out. We weren't meant for each other. Even though we spent 11 years of somewhat misery together, we found a way at some point to just say, okay, it's done. It's over. We need to break this off. So I married again a year later after the divorce. I divorced in October of 2000. And I married a woman that I met while I was bouncing the Limberlost Lounge up in Houghton Lake, which is the biggest, shallowest lake here in the state of Michigan. I had bounced that event, which is like the Tip Up Town event that takes place in January of every year on the ice-covered lake. And then again in usually July for the Budweiser Bud Fest, which would take place in the summer. And that was like a crazy smorgasbord of boats and people and craziness and all kinds of stuff. Well, I met my second wife at that event one year, and regretfully so, things didn't go out as expected. For the first few months, we were running actually the apartment complex at SVSU College, which is here in Michigan, just north of us, or just outside the Saginaw city limits. And we had an apartment inside there where we were watching over it as she was the manager. I was staying in the apartment. And it was one of those things where we had to take control of all these kids in college to make sure that they didn't tear the place apart. Well, somewhere along the lines, my wife got pregnant. We all know how that happens, but it wasn't really anything we had planned. So it was somewhat of an accident. Let's just say it for what it is. And I decided, as the man that I am, that it was probably best that we marry and make this a thing, that we had to make things happen so that, you know, the child would be able to be raised proper with a good education, a good family foundation, and things of that nature. Well, little did I know, the woman I had married after this fact was someone I didn't expect to be who she was. There's a lot to be said there. There are criminal records involved. There are times where she got in trouble that I wasn't aware of, that while we were married, she went to court hearings that I was not privy to, avoided jail time a couple of times herself. And we'll be bringing up some of that stuff later in the broadcasts as we move ahead. But the fact of the matter is I came home one day to discover a police officer and a Kohl's security guard in my driveway. I had forgotten a little bat house that I made my son for my first marriage that I was going to take to him because we worked on it together at Home Depot. And when I came to get the bat house, I discovered the cars in my driveway and several bags of stolen merchandise being removed from my home. At that time, I was a fireman for the Buena Vista, which is just outside Saginaw Township, the Buena Vista Fire Department. I knew the police officer who was on scene. So he looked at me and kind of laughed and said, you know, don't worry, you know, this isn't about you. We've been following your wife for like 30 days now to see what's up. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, you could have told me, but that's fine. And they knew I wasn't in any way attached to the criminal activity that she had been partaking in for several years at the time. Needless to say, I broke it off with her at that time, and the first thing that took place was a domestic violence allegation was placed against me because I was trying to keep things at a level that were on the up and up. I'm a very honest individual. I don't talk trash. I don't lie about people. I make certain that anything I have to say is factual and truthful. So when the truth started to expose itself, she felt jeopardized. She felt somewhat, what's the word I'm looking for? She was at risk, I guess, of the truth. And so she had to lash out and used everything in her book of tricks to try and discredit anything I had to say. I actually found out after the fact that the two children she had been removed from her custody by not only her mother, but her ex-boyfriend. So these were people that were lying to me the whole time. I had no idea what was going on with the other children, and I adopted them basically as my stepchildren, let's say. Let's not adopt, but let's consider the facts. They were in my home all the time as my own children. And then in the end, it came down to the fact that in July, actually it was July 4th, 2005, I received my independence. I left and I gathered all my stuff. I put it in a car and I was taking off. And in doing so, there was an altercation that she attempted to basically throw my merchandise around the yard or down the stairs. In that, I just grabbed my stuff and got out of there. Well, another call was made to the state police this time as another domestic case to try and bring me to whatever justice she felt she was trying to do. Well, both those cases were dismissed because the court system attempted to try to get me to plead guilty to things I didn't do. And by standing my ground and saying, look, I'm not going to plead guilty to anything that I'm not accountable for, so we're not going there. I walked away from the courthouse that day to go to lunch and came back to a note from my attorney that said, you can go home. Everything's been dismissed. There's nothing here. So that was all taken care of. But, however, during the divorce hearings, what ended up transpiring was that type of stuff gets used against you quite a bit. Even though they were only allegations, they come up in court all the time. Relatively all the time. And it tends to paint a very ugly light against the individual, especially a father figure like myself, who was doing everything he can to find employment at the time. Because in 2008, I was laid off from a very well-to-do engineering position at an engineering firm in Saginaw, Michigan. It had been bought out. It was originally RC Engineering and Associates, and it was bought out by a company known as Wilcox Professional Services. They were headquartered in Cadillac and had discovered this business that the Crandall, I should say Dick Crandall, was running, was in jeopardy. So they decided to buy into the business. And when they did, about 6 months later, they decided to let go of half the staff. Me having only 6 years seniority in that office, though I'd been doing the type of work I was doing for well over 15 or almost 20 years, I was let go with half the rest of the company. In doing so, I was collecting unemployment, and in that process started to struggle with getting bills paid, especially child support. Now, I was probably having to make a payment of roughly $289 a month or more, actually, at the time. But the fact of the matter was, it was much higher than that, actually. It was very difficult for me to make the payments when I was unemployed. Even though the unemployment would take half of my unemployment check and apply it toward actually 2 court cases that I had. If you remember, in 2000, I divorced my first wife of 11 years. We married in 89, had 2 kids. They hadn't grown yet, so I was still paying support on those 2. Well, when this third child was born, it was, again, a responsibility of mine that I had to maintain, and I didn't have a problem with that. But in the end, when the unemployment kicked in and I couldn't find any work in the business. Now we're talking 2008. This is the recession, the big recession where the real estate bubble burst. Everything was going downhill. Well, I was working in somewhat the real estate end of things because we were building everything. We were building subdivisions. We were building retail outlets. I worked exclusively on several hundred CVS stores and Rite Aid stores and Builder Square stores. This is what I did. So what ended up transpiring was I didn't go back to the court like I should have to reduce my support during the time that I was unemployed. Now, during that period, of course, the arrearage started to build up. I assumed no problem. Within 6 to 8 months, maybe a year, I get back on my feet, everything will be fine. I'll be off unemployment. That's not the way things went, obviously. And in the end, by the time we got to 2012, I was roughly, it's got to be close to 10 grand in arrears because the amount that was being taken from me was substantial. So you go a few months out without having any money, and that payment tends to turn into a big balance, especially when they add in statutory fees and other fees that are involved with collecting child support. I didn't think I was going to have much trouble. Nobody ever complained. It was just one of those things. People were getting along. But my ex, once we encountered my current wife, that's when things got ugly. She was expecting me to be there whenever I was available to take the child. Didn't matter whether or not I was working or scheduled to do something or going on vacation or whatever. It was just like at her beck and call. And when I realized I was going to be marrying my third wife, who's Jenna, you've probably seen her online a few times. We will be doing the keto challenge together here shortly, very shortly. And Brad, thanks for being here, by the way. I see you over there. This is going to be a long-winded conversation for this broadcast. We basically knew right off the bat there were going to be problems with my second wife. Not so much first wife, because she'd never given me issue. There was never an issue in the first marriage so much that it would draw that kind of attention. But once we got down to, getting married again, it became rather ugly with my second wife. And she tried to keep my son away from my new wife. She tried to keep my son away from me, and did a very good job of it by injecting that whole domestic violence allegation within that context. So it made things very ugly for everybody. In the long run, we fought in trials and tribulations and tried to make sure that things were going to be handled properly by the law. Well, she took me into court for now saying I didn't make a $75 payment. So that gave her an opportunity to try and come at me with the law to say, I'm going to get this guy for not making this payment. Well, while we were in court, I have to kind of back up and explain something. We had a judge who was going to let us establish a new form of income, which was out in Kalamazoo. I was taking a position as an engineer's technician / engineer at the city. So I was going to be working as a city engineer for the city of Kalamazoo. Needless to say, I went on faith. We moved from Saginaw all the way across the other side of the state because the engineer who was interviewing me, I probably went through 6 interview processes in order to get to where I was at, said, don't worry, you got this. It's in the bag. So I was feeling pretty grateful. I was like, this is great. This is going to work out perfect. I got this great $20 an hour union job coming at me. I can pay my debt that I owe. Everything's going to work out really great. We'll finally get back on track. So I told the judge, I said, Judge, I'm moving to Kalamazoo. I'm not going to be able to honor the parenting time schedule at this time because I really got to get traction on this job. I can't be leaving. I won't have any money to make it back and forth on a weekly basis and come pick them up on Wednesdays like I normally do. So he granted me that. He said, no problem. Just, send in a written motion to say that you're going to be removing your access to the parenting time. You can still call and, email or whatever you want to do. Not a problem. Well, within that week, we had also been fighting the ex over parental alienation. She wasn't letting me see my kid. She was not there when it was time for me to pick him up. She wouldn't show up to get him on the returns, things like that, or make me show up in other places to return him. It got to the point where we had to go to police stations to get my son and to drop off my son. And it just became a total nightmare. It was just ridiculous. So in that process, we discovered that it wasn't going to be really easy to work with the plaintiff because she's the one that actually filed for the suit because she jumped the gun and got to it before I did. Anyway, I digressed a little. So in that, I had an understanding with Judge Crane that I was going to have to deter some of that time for a period, and he was okay with it. Well, he retired. Now, this kind of goes back to the last story. Somebody knew the facts and then runs away and isn't there when the actual position takes place, and that kind of relates to Kalamazoo as well. I'll explain. When I realized that the case was going to a new judge, I was kind of concerned because I had already mailed my motion in, and it wasn't going to Judge Crane this time. It was going to a different judge. I assumed Judge Crane would maybe relay some data as to why, but it seems in the courts they don't talk amongst themselves very much. Right hand doesn't always know what the left hand's doing, you might say. So I come to discover, after my written motion went through, that they had denied some things that I requested and also decided to slap me with a psychological evaluation as to why I wasn't honoring my parenting time, and actually put in the order that my parental time was suspended. So it was by court order, it was suspended on my request. Okay. It was really my request. But the plaintiff used that against me through the entire next 10 years to say, oh, his parenting time's been suspended. It's been revoked. There's a no contact order between him and me and my son. That was all lies. Every bit of it was a lie. But the new judge knew nothing of it. And my first time in front of the judge was because I had filed a complaint with the first judge, William Crane, to have my ex held accountable for the parental alienation show cause hearing in support of the fact that she was never there. She wouldn't get me my kid when she was supposed to, things of that nature. And she was found in contempt, paid fines, and was expected to give me 2 weeks of makeup time with my child. So this all went back to court during my makeup time. I had 2 weeks with my kid. First time I hadn't seen him in 6 months. 2 weeks, I got to spend time with my kid. I'm in court. I was supposedly saying I didn't pay $70 or couldn't pay $75. I didn't have any money on me at the time while I was in court. So what happened? That judge put me in handcuffs and sent me to jail on her whim. She was like, he goes, what do you want me to do? He doesn't have the money, and you say he doesn't pay support yet. I've been paying support. So he put me in jail that day, and I looked at him. I said, wait a minute, Judge, you're going to throw me in jail during the time that I'm to have makeup visitation with my son? How does that work? I don't understand. And he realized his mistake. He knew it. He looked right at me, and he was like, oh, okay. I had no idea what was going on here, obviously. But he wasn't going to change his mind because he'd already ruled against me. He'd already slammed the gavel and called judgment. I mean, it was one of those situations. So what happened? The court clerk was asked to call my wife, Jenna, on the telephone and request that my son be handed over to my ex at the door of the home. Not a single word was to be said to him as to why. Now, this is a verbal court order over the telephone. How does my wife know who's calling on the phone to give up this child? Could have been any stranger calling on the phone to wait at the door for Bonnie to show up. And I used her name there because you'll see later. It doesn't really matter anymore. And this is why this story is finally coming to light, because I divorced in 2004. Wait, 2001, 2005, it was all finalized. So this is 14 years ago. Now, after 14 years, I was paying child support for 7 of those. Up until August of 2017, we lost a big income stream over here at the Best Homestead that we were trying to catch up on and make adjustments for. However, it didn't work out the way we wanted. So there were a couple payments that weren't going to make it that year, that summer. So I filed a motion with the courts to have my support reduced down to a more palatable amount, because it was around $300 a month for one child at the time. And I was still paying on my Oakland County account as well. So don't think I don't pay support. I paid a lot. I've got numbers to prove it. But the fact of the matter is that now here I am, an individual that's in his 50s, been in court pro se. I couldn't even afford attorneys, folks. This is somebody who has gone to court back and forth on his own, creating his own motions, his own everything. I did all the paperwork myself. I did the presentations myself. I stood in front of the judge myself. I had no one to back me up. It worked out pretty well for the most part. And I did this in 2 counties, both times, every time, Oakland and Saginaw. Well, in the long run, where was I, Brad? In the long run, even after filing the motion to have the support reduced, which I got, it was received okay. We'll get into the judges on this matter later. I got my support reduced to around $100 a month in December of 2017. In March of 2018, I started getting letters from attorneys in Saginaw saying, we'd like to represent you in your felony case. I had no clue what they were talking about. So I decided to find out by calling a couple of the attorneys that sent me the letters and say, hey, what's going on here? What are you talking about? A felony case? I said, yeah, there's a bench warrant out for your arrest for the fact that you missed payments this last year on child support. I said, well, yeah, of course I did. That's why I went to the friend of the court to straighten this out and get a motion in there so that I could have things adjusted and work to pay down that arrears that I'd had from 10, 12 years ago as well. Because not once did the courts ever assign a payment plan that was to include the arrearage payments. Now, one other reason those arrearage payments continued to skyrocket was because what's known as MISDU, or the Michigan Support Disbursement Unit, is expected to receive payments from the payee and then send it to the payer, whoever receives the pay, or the whatever it is. It goes either way, the payer and the payee. Okay. And in that process, because I had another account in Oakland County, there were a lot of times where payments would supersede into the first account and not get applied to the second account. So that's another reason that the payments kept going up. And I couldn't still find a way to rectify that with the court. They were just like, well, that's just the way it is. We do calculations based on this and that, and how many kids you got, and when you see them, how much you see them, how many times you see them, and who's got who, and what cases where, and this is just what you pay. And that's where it goes. thinking, okay, yeah, but you're building an arrearage against me that doesn't exist because I made my payment every month. Okay. So that was where I was at the time. They came to my house and arrested me, and I'll tell you how. After contacting the attorneys and realizing I had a bench warrant out for my arrest, I called the attorney general personally to talk to them and said, hey, this is Leland Best. I was just in court in October through December to get my support reduced because I couldn't make payments. I know that's the way you're supposed to do it. Can you please tell me why there's a bench warrant out for my arrest? I didn't actually talk to the gentleman. I had to leave it on the phone, and I didn't get a return call. But that Monday, because this was a Friday, that Monday around 1 o'clock, a knock came at the door. My wife kind of knew. She just had a suspicion, intuition, let's call it. She's very intuitive. And it didn't look like it was going to go down well. Well, there was an officer at my door came to arrest me for failure to pay child support based on the claim that Saginaw's attorney general, the state attorney general, came after me. I sat in my driveway for over 25 minutes handcuffed behind my back in the backseat of a police car while they figured out what they were supposed to do with me. Nobody knew what to do. Nobody was expecting to take me to jail. Nobody knew whether I should go to Saginaw or stay here. And I'm a block away from the Shiawassee County Courthouse. So in the end, they put me in jail. And at first it was going to be, you'll be extricated up to Saginaw within the hour. Okay, fine. Kind of glad I didn't get there because I probably wouldn't have got out of jail in any way, shape, or form if I had. They decided to keep me overnight and ship me the next day. So I had about a few hours to come up with $3,500 in cash for a cash bond. It's what happens when you owe child support. They will set the bond for at minimum 25% of what's owed and possibly more. Well, for the fact that my arrearage was up around 12 grand by that time, that 25% was substantial. So one way or another, my wife ran around. Now, my wife's not one to be left alone at home. So she was expected to find her way out, get somebody to come pick her up and take things wherever she needed to be at the time. I'm just going to put the clock up here for a minute so we know where we're at. And this was like over expectations for my wife. This was driving her anxiety levels through the roof. I mean, this just wasn't right for her to have to deal with. And I was calling on the wrong phone number the whole time. I was actually calling myself from jail. It was really stupid. I don't know why I associated my cell phone number with her cell phone number, but I kept dialing out of the phone in the cell. And I was actually calling myself on a phone that was somewhere hidden in the back of the sheriff's department. So needless to say, I couldn't get a hold of my wife. And then finally she came through and I realized I was making the wrong calls. And in that process, she managed to get the cash to bring to the jail and get me out. And I have to thank my parents for that. That's all I can say. And that's about as far as I'm going to take that right now. In that process, we got out of the jail situation. And then I obviously had to go through all the court proceedings that followed after that. Well, I called an attorney, or had my wife call an attorney that we had already been talking with, because we knew there was a possibility that with the fact I was filing the motion and I saw the bench warrant come up, I called this guy who I knew from a shul in Lansing. It's a place where us Jews congregate instead of a church. We call it a shul or a synagogue. And in that, I'd only met the guy once, but I felt, well, maybe this will work out for me. I'm sure he might give me a break and on fees or whatever, and that might help me out along the way. So we secured this individual and right away started finding out what we could do to deal with this problem that we had. Bad choice of attorneys. Let's just put it that way. He suddenly vanished from the scene after making a couple of potentially bad mistakes, because we had to go to district court first. Okay, first thing you have to do when someone files a bench warrant against you on a felony offense, which this is a 4-year felony charge, is they have to know that it's a legitimate case. So the first thing it does is it goes into district court to see if it's even worthy of going back to circuit court for actual trial. And I feel at that time we should have really been beating down the bush that created this issue in the first place and probably gotten it dismissed right off the bat, because I had already gone through the necessary procedures to do what I had to do or what I was supposed to do. Well, that didn't go as well because this guy just didn't know what the hell he was doing. I felt really, this happened to me before, okay, where I made the mistake of not going to court on my own and paying an attorney to go with me. The last time I did that cost me $25,000 in retroactive spousal support with my first marriage. And that's something that's still on the books today. And that's something I'll discuss again in another broadcast. I'm trying to cover the bases here and just give you a generalized concept of what's going on before we move ahead. So from there, here I am, 2 ex-wives. One's claiming domestic violence. The other one I was married to for 12 years never said a single word about it because there never was such a thing. And now, not only have I been alienated from my first 2 kids, we'll talk about that as well in the coming weeks, but now I'm starting to become alienated from my third son, who's only 7 years old. She disappears several times during the course of trial during this divorce. I had to chase her down. Didn't even know where she was at one point, where she didn't get what she wanted from her attorney. Her attorney fired or dropped himself from the case and had no idea where she was. So I just tried to stick it out and figure out what was going to happen next. Well, I finally located her and got her back to court. And this is where things just continued to go downhill. By the time, well, let's put it this way. While we were in Kalamazoo, I didn't get the job, if you recall. So I started working for a company called Labor Ready, which was I'd have to call in or show up every morning at 5:30. Actually, it was more of a show up to get a ticket to go to work somewhere, just to make money. Because I'd lost this $20 an hour union job because they gave it to another guy. The guy that I told you said I had it in the bag retired, just like the judge did. Left the company and left his position to someone else who decided to take the other candidate for the job instead of me, who had already moved to the position, thinking that I had it in the bag. So I just lost a $20 an hour union job and had to start working for $4.50, $5 an hour. That's what I said, $4.50 to $5 an hour at Labor Ready, doing whatever. Filling envelopes, cutting wood, emptying dumpsters, didn't matter what it was. Finally got an opportunity because the guy at the Labor Ready counter knew me pretty well. He'd seen me every morning. He knew I was respectable. He knew I was on time. He knew I was always there to get work. He said, hey, I got a job for you. It's carpet cleaning. Go check it out. So I went to this company called Anderson Stamatic. And they have offices around the country, but not too many. And I started cleaning carpets. Got certified in water damage restoration and did a lot of fire and mold remediation as well. Being a fireman, I was a fireman for 3 years in Buena Vista. And that kind of started the ball rolling on me getting some decent income in and starting to pay some bills again. But then I fell out of the back of a truck. Lo and behold, we were emptying this huge thing out of the back of a moving van, and I stepped off the back of the platform lift that's on the back of the truck. Took one step too many. Flat on my back on the concrete. Didn't really do a lot to me, but it did reset some old injuries. I had a separated shoulder from 2000 that flared back up. Plus I had a lower back injury that flared back up. So I had all these complications and I could simply not perform the task of fire and water restoration. You're talking a 50 plus pound steel wand you got to push around. Trying to haul and break down, damaged goods when it comes to flooded units or fire damaged structures, things of that nature. I'm sure you can kind of picture it in your head. So in the end, I had to quit. There was no other way. It was just no way I could get up in the morning and actually perform a task safely without concern for my own safety and the safety of others around me. So when I did, I thought, I got an idea. I'm going to go ahead and start a restoration company. Apologize for the noise that might come with this. So I just wanted to see if I had one. I should. I have a bunch of cards here. I've run so many businesses, guys. It's not even funny. All right, let's see. All right, here's my water restoration certification. Okay, I was a water damage restoration tech for IICRC, which is it's a big name for a lot of stuff. This is the company I worked for at the time, Stamatic. You see the last name's a little different. See that, Leland Geiger? You see me as Leland Best. This says Lee Geiger, right? It's because I took back my birth name after being a Geiger for 40 plus years. Here it is. Okay, so I started this company known as radar.com. And if you can read that, it says the restoration and disaster recovery, the restoration and disaster recovery resource. Okay. I was a certified water damage technology restorer, which means I could also restore damaged electronics. I received a certification in that as well. Computer equipment, electronic equipment that gets damaged in fires, we break it all down, wash it literally, and fix it up, put it back into service. So I thought I had something good. I started a website, which no longer, I still have all the data behind it, but it's not online anymore. And it was called Restoration and Disaster Recovery.com, or short, radar for short. Didn't go as planned. Didn't make the money I thought I would be able to make right off the bat. So I contacted the courts again. They were aware that I had quit my job. So I wanted to get my support reduced to the fact that I was making $12 an hour. I needed just a break from that $12 an hour fee for a short period of time so I could get back on my feet. And normally that's the way it works. You're having trouble. You can't make a payment. You go talk to the courts. They usually work with you and somehow or another find a way that you can either make payments differently or change your account around for a later date. So I was okay with that. This time they weren't doing it. Because I had quit the job, they were going to impute the income of $12 an hour on me and leave it there. Okay, fine. I'll do what I got to do to get a job. For 7 or 8 years, I paid on the $12 imputement, which equated to about $290 a month, $300 a month, let's say. Made those payments for 7 or 8 years before this occurrence in 2017, where we missed a couple payments at the end of the year, and that's when they came after me. So now I'm kind of just flabbergasted. I don't know what to do next after all this, and we just lived it out. We moved back from Kalamazoo. We had a lot of grandbabies being born. Actually, 3 granddaughters in the same, or 3 of our daughters the same year were having babies. 2 of them actually swapped birthing rooms at the hospital. I was one of those kind of people where everybody knew who we were, and it was, oh my God, there's that guy that got all the babies being born this year. So it was just one of those years. And when we came back to the area we're in now, which is Corunna, it's literally, we use this as our map. We like to tell people, we're somewhere in here. I was born over here in the Thumb. I used to live down here in Oakland County. We were in this area for a little while. We moved out to we were in Saginaw for a little while, and then we moved out to Kalamazoo, and now we're back in here near Lansing, Michigan. That's just the way we do our geography around here. So after the grandkids were born, we're trying to find, we were renting, and then we started another business. Do I have that card? This went pretty well, actually, for a period. Well, here's another business that was in between that. This was Best at Mobile. This was, and you can see now I'd changed my name in 2012. So this was my new card. I was selling mobile apps. I was building mobile apps for local businesses. Shiawassee County, the business base here isn't real big on technology. If you probably know, it's a hillbilly, corn-fed, grass-raised, corn or cow-driven type atmosphere. This is all rural. Not many people are into this kind of technology. They just don't understand it. So it didn't fly very well. And I had to basically close up shop. Well, my son-in-law was doing automotive detailing at the time. And he had started in the Lansing area and even around this area. And he had 10 shops at the time. And he was running them on his own with several employees. And he asked me one day, he says, hey, how would you like to manage one of my shops? I want to bring one into Corunna. So I said, sure, I can do that. Not a problem. Let's get her done. So he opened a shop. We together got all the equipment we needed and rented a small little building with 2 overhead doors about a mile from where we're at now. Started this business a year later. You probably can't see that, but this is because of the colors. This is Best Auto Spa. It's all in the details. It was originally Cosmetology because it was his business. And then after a little while of running it, he had a lot going on south in Oakland County. He said, hey, how would you like to take it over? So in February 2014, we took over Cosmetology and renamed it Best Auto Spa. We did great that year. So starting in February 2014 to the end of that year, we grossed $99,000 in sales because we were handling most of the dealership accounts when it came to lease turn-in. So they would get their leases back from people, or people would sell their cars to them to trade up for another vehicle. And then we would come collect it, bring it to the detail shop, clean it back up, send it back to the dealership. You get like $99 a pop for those. Okay, they're not very expensive details. It's not like the $250 details you find in Oakland County. And we couldn't get anybody locally to even pay that to do a standard professionally detailed job on their personal vehicles. So we just kind of let it go. By June of 2015, we were suffering in debt. We were paying 4 employees. Our workman's comp fees were totally miscalculated by the insurance company that we were dealing with at the time. So we had all these backlogs of payments that weren't made the way they should have been, even though we were paying our workman's comp across the board. The insurance got the number wrong and came claiming to us that we owed them more money. The building was so old. It was an old do-it-yourself car wash that it started as. So we had all the equipment and pumps and stuff that we needed built in, but we had to bring a lot into it, and the heat in the building sucked. It was on fuel oil when we got it. We converted it to gas and electric, but we still couldn't keep up the bills on that maintenance to keep the heat and electricity and the water flowing in that building were incredibly enormous. They were just ridiculous. And we thought we could hold on, but we just had to make an executive decision to say, no, we're done here. This is not going to make us enough profit. I think we pulled in $13,000 in profit that year, of which most of it paid my support. Okay. So there was no room for error. There was no room to live. There was just nothing there. And since 1995, I've run my own business. I've always run my own civil engineering tech business on the side. And it was something that faltered from 2009 on because of the industry I was in. And I was only then working after that for one engineer who's a good friend of mine. Well, a little bit of work would trickle in now and then on that. And that kept our heads afloat. But my wife was really paying most of the bills. And I love her to death for doing what she's done for me over these last 10 years. We've been married, it'll be 11 years in November. No complaints, no problems. We just like any other married couple, we have our issues, but none of that domestic crap like you keep hearing from the middle one. So from that point on, we've been kind of struggling. I'll be honest. You see me out here a lot doing my videos, but I make a few dollars here and there on video editing and CAD work and other things that I do. I sell products and services that are related to the live streaming industry. Wrote a book in September 2017, actually, just before. I don't have it here in front of me. I apologize. If you've seen it, you all know what it is. It's Best Guide to Live Stream Video Broadcasting. Next edition comes out. It's going to be known as Best Live Guide, basically. So you can find that at bestliveguide.com. if you want to go check it out. But it's these tumultuous tribulations, I guess you'd call them, where it's constantly riding a roller coaster of up and down, up and down. You think, sorry about that, I bumped the mic. You think you're getting somewhere. And I really thought at the end of 2017, when I got my support reduced to the second wife, that, wow, I can finally breathe. We're going to get this all figured out. We're going to be able to pay all these bills. We're going to catch up. We're going to get back on track and things are going to be great. And then they throw me in jail. That's when things just get flipped upside down completely and you don't know what to do next. So that's where I'm at. Because of this, the ex filed such a tremendous, and I may share this story later, a tremendously bogus account of events during our marriage that never existed. And I can prove it. It's all on the record. And that's why it's so funny when you think about it, that someone would try to lie blatantly to a court system and commit perjury in front of a judge when all the evidence contrary to such information is right there on the court record. And we come to discover the only reason I ended up being arrested was because the judge who was now overseeing the case, the third one, this is the woman who used to be the prosecuting attorney from my first time in on that domestic abuse cause allegation back in 2005. She didn't like me because she's never been able to hold me accountable to what she thinks I should be held accountable for. She was always trying to get me to plead to stuff. Well, I think she got her day in court because in the end, there was some type of stipulated order filed prior to the motion to have me, or prior to the motion for the bench warrant, which never really was a motion, that basically stated, it was brought in by the plaintiff, that said there was a stipend order, what's called a stipulated order. What that means is two parties agreed to something and you're bringing in a motion / order, which means it's already been written into an order that all you have to both do is sign it. It was brought to the court, which is to say that my ex tried to say I agreed to move the case from Saginaw to Kent County. That's all the way over on the other side of the state by Kalamazoo. That's where she's living now. We discovered this woman has not reported her addresses over the course of 10 years straight, and we seen several occasions where she's moved from man to man to man and been unable to maintain a respectable lifestyle for my son, who's now going to be 17 this August. I haven't seen my son in 10 years. 10 years. He tried to communicate with me 4 years ago via Fire Talk, which was a website similar to this, actually. Left comments on the side. I finally found my dad. I love you so much. God, thank you so much for letting. I mean, he's literally been trying to connect with me. Called me through Facebook Live one day, or Facebook I am one day, just to see my face. And we got to talk, but we always knew that was going to happen that way. And you could tell on his face, he was scared to death to let anybody see what he was doing. He was like, trying to talk to me on the phone. Didn't want his mom to know that he was talking to me. Still, not enough money for me to go against the psychological evaluation. So that's a $2,500 fee to get one of those. Okay. There was just no way I could do it. I told the boy, I said, dude, I'm sorry. I really want to help, but we're going to have to wait this out, buddy. It's just going to have to be what it is. And he understood, but he's still dealing with anger and anxiety and frustrations, along with my other two kids, same type of stuff. Last summer, during the course of this process in 2018, after I'd been jailed and trying to fight this, my attorney disappears. Don't know where he went. Come August, I get a call from my family. It says my son has just, my 23-year-old son from my first marriage, had just stabbed his friend 6 times with a knife. Nearly killed him. Gashed him, almost cut his chin off, sliced through the back along the spine, gashed his arms a couple times, all over an air conditioner that was given to him as a temporary service. And when it was come to be claimed back, my son lost it. We'll get into him later. But I tried to contact my attorney about that and say, hey, man, I got a real problem going on now. Can you tell? No word. Didn't get a single word from that guy, even after giving definition of what was going on in my life. So not only was I dealing with the fact that I was being taken to court for a felony charge against me and failed to pay child support, but my oldest son had just nearly killed someone. It was a lot to swallow. And I couldn't talk about it for a long time. 1, because it just wasn't appropriate. And 2, I wasn't emotionally ready to. It was tough. And I still get, family movies. Nah, I have a tough time with family movies. Let's put it that way. But what the real problem is this happened on a Saturday night. My own family knew about it. A lot of them knew about it. I didn't find out until Monday afternoon. And then I was even lied to about why I didn't find out about it by several family members. To me, that's disgusting. And I responded appropriately. I don't speak to that part of my family anymore because of what they did. And it has a lot to do with other things that have transpired over the years as well to that point. So this was just the last straw. I wasn't going to have it anymore. And if you're listening out there, sorry, but that's just the truth. Okay? You know it. I know it. You guys don't want to accept it. You don't want to apologize for what you did. That's your business. But I'm not going to be the one to apologize because I have no reason to. So here we are now 2 years practically into the fact that I remember this was at the end of 2017. So it was March of 2018 that I was arrested. It's what? July of 2019, right? I went to probation today because I had a trial on June 8th. Thankfully, I had a great rapport with the judge. He knew there was something wrong. He figured it out because when you see the victim's statement, it's incredulous. It's just, oh my God, how can anybody write that kind of stuff against someone who not only was a fireman, not only was an upstanding member of society, worked 3 jobs at a time to try and pay his support while he was married to you? What are these claims you're making against him that just don't add up? They don't jive with the court record. So when the judge discovered that my own attorney was making mistakes with the attorney general, thinking I was going to try and undermine the actual order for the support with the case, which is something you can't do anyway during a hearing of that nature, the judge said, no, wait a minute. We're just going to sit down and talk. Mr. Best, could you tell me your side of the story here? And when he really heard it for what it was and understood the truth behind it, because now by this time, my attorney's trying to remove himself from the case. He wanted me to sign a thing that said we were not communicating. And yet I let him be. I didn't like hound him with phone calls at all. I paid the guy $1,500. I expect to get some kind of service from him. He wouldn't even return phone calls. So when he tried to remove himself from the case, I held him accountable, and the judge kept him on the case because he realized what he was trying to do. He didn't want to take it to trial. You can't normally win these things in trial anyway. There's just no escape clause really written into the child support laws that keep non-custodial parents from getting off any kind of hook whatsoever. I totally own the debt. I've never once tried to not pay the debt. I've always paid additional fees to try and maintain that debt. But it's not always easy, especially when you're trying to maintain a household of 2 families. 3, actually. Because I have my first marriage with 2 kids. I have my second marriage with 1 child. And I have my third marriage to my wife and her older children who are now, adults. But there's still a family involvement there. So I went into the probation department today and I should go back to the trial. Spoke with the judge for what seemed a good discourse. We were laughing, and actually we had the courtroom laughing actually that day for the fact that I completely flip-flopped both the AG and my attorney's stories and showed them the real facts behind the case. So the judge was like, okay, we're going to consider the plea. The plea was this. I plead guilty to a 4-year felony. I get a suspended sentence for 11 months, which means I'm not really going to be processed as a felon for 11 months until next June. Okay. What that allows me to do is everything possible within my means to pay down the debt that I owe, which is around 10 grand, minus the $3,500. Well, it's around 12 grand with all the fees and services and new fees that they've added thanks to this legal issue that could have gone to my kid. Now they're going to the court. So knock that 12 something down, $3,500. You're at around 9 grand, let's say. So I have about $1,000 a month, somewhere in there, to pay off over the course of a year. But thankfully, my probation officer was just a beautiful man. He was very gracious. He listened to my story. He saw all the follow-up and the paperwork and the backup to support it all. So they've given me a lot of leeway. I have 11 months to pay close to 10 grand. I don't have to report every month per se. I have some fees to pay, and I may not even have to walk in. I could probably call them, but their court's right down the road for me. So they've transferred the case over to Shiawassee County to watch it for them. If I get it paid down to 6 grand by the end of that period, I'm looking at a 2-year felony of attempted failure to pay child support. Okay. That's still, now the recommendation from the probation officer who interviewed me was 0 to 3 months. Okay. Which means, okay, it's a 2-year felony or a 4-year felony, but this guy don't deserve more than 3 months in jail for what he's been doing. And that's maximum. We really should just put him on the suspended sentence, see how much he can pay. And hopefully by the end of the 11 months, he'll get it paid off, or at least close enough where we can say, well, we'll extend it a little longer so you can help get this wrapped up and then probably dismiss it. Okay. If I don't get it to 6 grand at least, or I should say, if I get it 6 grand, it's attempted. If I get it paid off, it becomes a disorderly person, which is a misdemeanor. Even though I wasn't disorderly in any way, shape, or form, I did everything by order, by the book, the way I was supposed to. I think the judge knows that, but he wants to collect this money, just like every other Title IV person on the books is expected to do. And as you all very well probably know, they only go after the people who will pay. You can't get blood from a turnip. It's just the way it is. So a lot of those guys out there who aren't paying their support, the quote deadbeat dads, which I am not, by the way, and I will never claim to be, and anybody ever calls me one, I'll call them out on it. I'm going to start a podcast most likely called Welcome to the Pad, the Parental Alienated Dad, so that everyone can see the struggles I've been through with my kids and understand that there are ways that can be handled. There are other ways you have no chance of winning. It's not going to happen no matter how hard you try. So don't. But there are things you need to consider when you're in those positions and what you have to do. And I'm going to hopefully help some of those individuals. And I may even be connecting with folks in Pakistan in that regard, because there's a lot of that going on in Pakistan as well with some of my friends over there. So we may bring them on the show and start talking about some of the ways that the U.S. compares to those in Southeast Asia and the same struggles they go with parenting and alienation and child support issues and things like that. So that's where I brought it today. I've got about 5 minutes left on the map here. So I just wanted to kind of give an overall 30,000 foot view of where I'm at. Okay. I have 11 months to pay nearly $10,000. Now, there's a lot of that hype and fluff you see out there with all these marketers all the time. How this broke dude made 10 grand in 1 year and became a rock star. Okay. You see it all the time. It's all garbage, guys. Don't believe that crap. But you want to see somebody pay off 10 grand in 11 months? Watch me. I'll do my damnedest. I may not get it all paid off in time. I may come to a point where I get down to those last couple $1,000s and just haven't found a means to complete the process. We'll see. So the wife and I are starting a keto challenge over at the Bests Live, which who knows, we might come out here a little bit to hang out with people and get vocal about it as well, because I'm diabetic and I'm not able to feel my toes anymore. And we've come to the realization that the sugar intake and the carbs that I've been putting into my body need change. It all has to change. My wife feels the same way. She suffers from PTSD, anxiety, MS, among other things. So we're dealing with that, physical ailments, both of us. And I have severe cramping in my legs. My hands claw up. I can't use power tools or anything, or any kind of tools really. So I can't go get a labor intensive job. I'm going to be doing it all here from my studio. We're going to be broadcasting out several different types of broadcasts. I'll be working more on updating my book as we go along. And I will also be teaching courses of some kind or another when it comes to live stream broadcasting. I'm very close to a company in India who's going to possibly be providing me the ultimate live stream solution. And I will be distributing that across the U.S., along with some help probably from my friend Chris Ripko, CJ Ripko over at Raw and Real, Saloon 7 Studios. So look for that. I'm also going to be working with Mike Lucy on putting together some stuff for the end of life / insurance industry. He's going to be using BCB Live as a guest blogger, and he will be putting posts on BCB Live in that regard. So if you're either looking for some end of life support and getting some of that necessary paperwork done before that, please be sure to reach out to him. Let him know I sent you. And I don't know why Cordana just kicked in there. She must have heard me say something I wasn't supposed to. And from that, we're also going to kind of get those who are in that industry to understand how to develop leads themselves so that they can make a better future for them and their families by making more sales. So while we try to make money, we hope you can try to make money. I'm also going to be covering eBay over at Best Little Storehouse. If you check out at Best Little Storehouse on Facebook, you'll find my page there with my little sketch of my wife and I's face. It's an eBay store that I run primarily estate type stuff, but I also do a lot of drop shipping through a software known as eSync. And I'm going to go through that entire software process on how I generate sales with little or no effort. I actually don't use anything but that most of the time. I don't have to have the products here. I don't have to create the listings myself. They order, place, track, and everything automatically through the software. So be getting into all that heavy stuff as well. That's all I got. Brad, I want to thank you so much for hanging out this entire time. Looks like you were the only one in the bleachers today, but who knows who was out there. I know these kind of topics are very hard to discuss for a lot of people, so I didn't expect comments today. I didn't expect anybody to say a word, because sometimes it's best to just sit and listen and totally understand where a person's coming from before you pass judgment, and really get to know the person. You know, is the story they're telling really true? You can usually tell by the facts. You have to kind of weed through some stuff, because I know I threw that all out, a ton of stuff at once. I just wanted it out there. I had to get it off my chest, I guess. I just had to finally say, okay, I can say things now. I can do things now. And I'll explain how my mindset contributed to somewhat my own downfall over the last several years and made it much more difficult for me to get back on my feet. That's all coming on the next broadcast. So thanks again, Brad, for being here. This has been Leland Best out at Leland Best Live on Facebook, coming to you through Get Vocal out on my page. So if you want to find me out there, I have my broadcast page. All my previous recordings of Wake Up West Coast are out there, and a lot of my other broadcasts are also available out at Leland Best Live. And we'll probably have some YouTube channels coming up as well. So that's it for me, folks. Hope you have a great week. It is Monday, so I'm sure things will be picking up pace as we move along. But that's it for me. I'm out of here. See you next time, everybody.